Welcome to Steelers Brawl. This is Rudy Reyes. Welcome by Amber Lee, Noah Strickbine. Welcome to the first edition of Steelers Brawl. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. We appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Like it, love it, never leave it, share it, because we like that sort of thing. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, women and children, men that are younger, men that are older, of course, the manly men come out to watch Monday Night Football. Last night was no exception. Last night was a pure debacle as we found out who the Bears really were. Last night, they decided to grind it out at Soldier Field against a relatively decent but no splash play as far as Minnesota Vikings are concerned. But last night was definitely a tough one for the Bears as Nick Foles went down with it, not in a season-ending injury, but certainly something that Matt Nagy's going to look out for and look over as he sees Foles and everybody else involved in a bye week that some teams don't get. And we'll talk about that later on. Welcome, Amber, Lee, Noah Strickbine. You guys, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here.
Hey,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you guys. I appreciate it. Let's kind of dive into this because it needs to be talked about. We need to have this discussion. Last night, Minnesota Vikings, as aforementioned, I wouldn't say handily had taken care of the Chicago Bears because the Bears were in it almost to the end of the game. And, of course, you've seen Nick Foles go down. There was a lot of things I didn't like about this game. First of all, this was the weakest Monday night game of the year, except for when it got close, right? We always know that when games get closer, they get more exciting, more enthusiastic, more involved, and people just seem to tune in more and more and more. However, last night at Soldier Field was a tough outing for Matt Nagy and that ill-fated, laser, not-so-focused offensive line. No, we looked at last night's game against the Bears. What did Minnesota do right? What did the Bears do wrong?
I can tell you what the Bears did wrong. They started Nick Foles 5 weeks ago.
Save Allen Robinson.
Yeah, he's a backup. I don't care if he won a Super Bowl MVP. He is big and slow and immobile and inaccurate, and he doesn't have the long ball. He thinks small on the field. He gets manhandled. He's slow to get up. He's a backup quarterback. I don't know why they went to him when they started 5-1 with Mitch Trubisky, and they made this, and now they're 5-5 with Nick Foles.
Well, I don't know if we want to say that Mitch Trubisky was the answer because we can't say that. We can't say that. But
I agree.
You're definitely right. Nick Foles, he's living off the Super Bowl dream. I get it. He's got the name. You brought him in here to do exactly this, replace Mitchell Trubisky. But, he's not doing it. And I think, frankly, last night when he went down with the hip injury, it just kind of showed this is the end. It's time to move on. No matter what you have to do, whether it's Tyler Bray or, Mitch Trubisky or whoever it is that the Chicago Bears decide to go with, they need to change things up because they have the talent around them. They have the defense. They're just missing a quarterback.
They've got the special teams, too. Cordarrelle Patterson was phenomenal on that kickoff run back for a touchdown, the first of, a few this year. The Bears have it on defense and they have it on special teams, but their offense is just letting them down. They're settling for 1 to 2 field goals a game and a defensive score. That's pretty much what they're putting up there. And I know Matt Nagy handed.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Minnesota Vikings and you look at what they did last night, they didn't really do a whole lot. I really don't believe.
We're going to highlight.
Go ahead.
I think if we're going to highlight anything that the Bears did right, it's that they replaced David Montgomery as well as they could, which just shows more that they need a quarterback to make anything else happen.
Right. I could not agree more. But let's think about this. Bill Lazor comes in. He starts calling the offense, right? He did it in Cincinnati as offensive coordinator. Doing this in Chicago. I see a repeat, a Pete and repeat. Who fell off the boat? Pete or repeat? Well, it's the repeat special there in Chicago when there's lack of creativity. There is no motion behind the quarterback. There isn't a two-back set. There's no play action to speak of that I know of. You can't put RPOs because Nick Foles can't run. And you were talking about, Amber, in regards to him being a Super Bowl washout and things of that nature. That very well may be true. There are exceptions to that rule, though. And that exception to that rule is what we've seen from Joe Flacco, who decided to no, hold on a second. You look at the New York Jets. They have the worst record in the NFL right now and in the AFC East. But what Joe Flacco did is showed his experience, stepped in the pocket, took the hit, and delivered the strikes that he needed to. That was an old Joe Flacco. But wait, there's more. So now you have a guy who won a Super Bowl ring in Nick Foles. He's slow to get up. He's slow to throw the ball, but there's no offensive creativity. To your point, Noah, they do have the weapons. The problem is that they're not playing to the strengths of each individual player. And I said it on Twitter last night, as I like to go on Twitter quite a bit. Some I get trolled by, others I don't. But trolls are only what maybe a foot tall. Well, that's how Nick Foles played last night. Was about a foot tall. The Bears need a revamp. Someone needs to call Mike Ditka and ask him what he thinks.
No, nobody needs to call Mike Ditka.
Nobody needs to call Mike Ditka.
I don't know if they want to get him on the phone or not. But needless to say, the Minnesota Vikings took care of business, 19-13. This could not come at a better time to have someone like Nick Foles going down in an injury in classic fashion. He reminds me of Jay Cutler, minus the Super Bowl ring. But the way he played last night, I mean, you may as well have Jay Cutler on the sideline smoking a pack of Marlboro Reds. I mean, it was it was so lackadaisical last night to watch this game. There were glimpses of greatness in individual play. Make no mistake about it. You mentioned Cordell Patterson did pretty good. There were just so many good things, but there was a lot of bad things. Did Minnesota win this game, or did they lose it because the Bears were so bad, Noah?
The Bears lost it. They couldn't score at any point in time. I mean, they settled for 2 field goals and a special teams touchdown. They knew that the Vikings had nothing to worry about. They knew Chicago couldn't come down no matter what and score on them. Nick Foles just was bad. And I watch him play almost every week, and he's always bad. But he looked even worse. He looked even slower getting up. And he is not the answer. Mitchell Trubisky is likely not the answer, but he's younger. They drafted him for a reason. They need to put him in and see what they have in that guy before they start. I mean, they're probably going to be looking for replacements over the offseason, but they need to see what they have in Mitchell Trubisky. See if they even have, some trade bait or something. I mean,
it's definitely worth the trade. No. What do they do with Mitch Trubisky? Do they throw the biscuit name in the ring for trade value? What do they do with him?
You're not going to get anything from Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, maybe, but you have a guy like Josh Rosen floating around on a practice squad, and you just start thinking that there's way too many quarterbacks in the NFL. So I don't see him going anywhere, but you're right. I mean, at this point, you put him back in, and if we want to go off of Steelers terms right now, you look at him like Mason Rudolph. He lost his job to a guy who didn't deserve the job in Duck Hodges. And, that takes nothing away from Duck. I thought what he did was great. But everybody wanted Mason to be the guy. Well, he got a chance to go back in there, and he played okay. And they need to do the same thing with Mitchell Trubisky, at least see if they can light a fire with him. And move on in the offseason. I think either way you move on in the offseason. But this season, you at least put him out there to compete and say, hey, you got a 5-5 football team. What can you do?
Mitchell Trubisky led them to a 5-1 start.
He did?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that he's too inconsistent, though. His check down reads are bad. He doesn't know when to release the ball. He's very good on the run, though. You get him out of the pocket, especially in red zone. He's really efficient. He's able to get into the red zone. Probably, if this is an RPO and you have all this shift on the right-hand side and it's vacant, or maybe he has to beat one defender, he can run. He's got wheels. So the days of having an immobile quarterback that's stuck in the pocket, there are only a few exceptions to that rule. And one of those is Drew Brees, which we're going to segue into next. And you have Tom Brady. Then you have Ben Roethlisberger. You have all these guys who have the ability to scramble, but their designation is not to, unless they have to. We've seen Ben scamper against Baltimore. We've seen him scamper throughout the regular season. We'll talk about Steelers in a minute. But when we talk about scampering and running, there are just certain quarterbacks that do not have that escapability in order to get from behind center in order to make something happen. And I'm sorry, but Nick Foles, as you said, Amber, is a backup somewhere in the NFL. Where? I don't know. But everybody's overpaid for his services at this point. Everybody had that conversation about Kirk Cousins last season when Minnesota just made this, every single ounce of money is guaranteed. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you bother putting all this money into someone in a guaranteed fashion when he hadn't shown you nothing? Nothing. He'd shown you absolutely zilch, zero, not a nothing. But they did anyway.
That's just the magic of Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins.
And Nick Foles.
And Nick Foles.
And Nick Foles. Well, one is Nick Tragic, and the other one is borderline. I'm not going to say fantastic because Kirk Cousins is not fantastic by any means.
No.
But he is a game manager to a point. His job. Right. He's doing enough to hold on to the job. As long as he keeps winning, he'll retain that job. Speaking of quarterbacks who went down, Drew Brees. This is bad. This is just bad all the way around. I don't care who you are. I don't care what team you're on. I don't care what sport. Your star player goes down. You're in a world of hurt. Where do you put it? The ball in the hands of a guy who threw more interceptions than he did completions last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm talking about Jameis Winston. Drew Brees went down, who is a career TD pass record holder. He passed Tom Brady when they played them in Tampa Bay. And what's really interesting about this is that this was almost a one-side butt-kicking contest by Drew Brees, and he usually puts that up on anybody that he goes against. There, he did have his moments this season where he was interception-prone. He wiped it off. Mm-hmm. He said, "You know what? I need to shrug my shoulders. I got to dust off this, these chips with no salsa. I got to get rid of them. I got to start playing right." Noah, his lungs one lung is punctured. His ribs are broken on both sides. And I'll be honest with you, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that they did not throw a flag on that play. There are rules to protect quarterback. I'm not a quarterback-friendly guy, mind you. I'm more like a defensive-minded guy, but I love a good offensive set of play calling. He landed on top of him, put 350 pounds all over Drew Brees, who maybe could be like 175 soaking wet.
He still had the ball in the pocket, though. You're going to take him down.
But
you can't.
But he wasn't out of the pocket, though. He was still in the pocket.
On Drew Brees. I mean, he had the ball. I mean, he was taking him down for a sack, not just.
But you can't put your body, and that's part of the rule. It's either good enough to call for anybody, or it's not good enough to call for Drew Brees. Which one is it? All those calls, everybody said, "Well, if it was Tom Brady, that would happen." Really?
If it was Tom Brady, that would happen. That is definitely that's a guarantee.
He would get up and start crying, kind of like Phillip Rivers. Anyway, cry me a river. No,
I don't know.
What you got on this?
Know. I don't know. I don't know if it was a penalty or not. I mean, Drew Brees is a small guy. You got to remember that. So hits look a lot worse on him than most people. So I don't know. I that one's too close to call. I'll leave that one to the refs. But what it did do is open up a pathway to see where Jameis Winston is and also how close the Saints are to replacing Drew Brees, I believe. Because Jameis Winston's not going to sit there forever, and they know that this isn't a Teddy Bridgewater. This is a starting quarterback in the NFL. And now we get a couple of weeks where we get to see it.
I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is the starting quarterback in the NFL, and Jameis Winston is an interception machine. So I don't know that they're in a...
All right.
I don't know.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Yeah. I think Bridgewater went 5-0 filling in for Brees last season, and I don't know that Jameis Winston. I don't know that he's going to be able to get it done in the meantime. And they gave I was watching SportsCenter and stuff this morning, and they gave the most optimistic timetable for Drew Brees to come back. 2 to 3 weeks with 5 fractured ribs and a punctured lung.
Not going to happen.
I mean, he's going to be out 5,
not
6, 7 weeks.
He's lucky if he comes back to play this year.
He's lucky if he comes back to play in his career.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. A punctured lung, that's not something you play with. This isn't like a balloon at a party where you can bust one and all of a sudden inflate another one and say, you know what? I wonder what the helium does for my voice. No, it's not like that. He's going to be done. He's going to be sitting on the sidelines. Look, he's got a Super Bowl. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He holds records nobody can touch, except for maybe if Tom Brady can get past him on those TD passes. Outside of that, you know, he has nothing to lose. He's already won a title. Sure, would it be nice to win another one? Yes, but not at the expense of your life. I'm sorry. There's just no way. Some things are bigger than football, and your life is one of them. Speaking of teams that don't seem to have a life, I'd like to kind of switch gears to that because Seattle really surprises me so far. I look at this line up front for Wilson, and I think to myself, who is this Seahawks team? Who are they? When are they going to show up and actually be the team that they need to? No, they don't have a running game. Carson's out. So they put in some third-rate, third-string guy that signed off the practice squad, elevated him or what have you. But this team doesn't know what they're doing, whether they're coming or going. And you have these Seattle apologists saying, well, maybe Seattle is, they are who we thought that they were. Maybe the offensive line isn't very good. He's going to have to put up 40-plus points. All that's true. All of it's true. Every single aspect of that is true. The problem that I have is that the offensive line is not doing him any favors. But the fact alone that he fumbled at the line, and of course the Cardinals are much, much more efficient in that regard. At least we're talking in the NFC West overall with the Hail Murray. We'll talk about it in a minute. What is going on in Seattle? Does anybody have any idea? Does Russell Wilson know? What is going to be the answer there?
Russell Wilson is the only answer there. They've got nothing on defense. Nothing. They've been flying high with Russell Wilson, letting him cook everything throughout the season, talking about MVP chances, but they don't have anything else besides Russ Wilson. And the Rams slowed him down. The Seahawks only scored 16 points. They're going to be a blueprint now for slowing Russ down. And without him, they're nothing. I don't even think that they're going to end up competing in the division at this point. I think it's going to be between the Rams and the Cardinals.
Yeah, I don't think that Seattle season ends the way that anybody thought it was going to. I'd go as far as saying that at some point I think Seattle's fighting for a playoff spot. But that's just because of everything you just said. There's nothing. Yeah. There's no defense there whatsoever. And, maybe the offense gets a little bit better when Chris Carson comes back. If he comes back anytime soon, that seems to be a real hit or miss situation. And, you can only throw the ball so many times. I get that he's an MVP caliber player, maybe the best quarterback in the NFL. But when you have nothing around you, nothing at all, and like you said, no offensive line, what are you going to do? How many games can you realistically win?
And it took one player to take that whole team down. It was Jalen Ramsey taking out DK Metcalf, and that was it. It was one player taking down their entire offense, essentially.
Well, I said this before the game ever started, that Seattle is one of those teams that I thought was going to be more in contention than they are right now, dropping one to the LA Rams in the NFC West. But they're really a shell of themselves. And again, because of the inconsistencies, the defensive inconsistencies, they'll show up one game and there'll be this run-stopping D. Then all of a sudden they just get shredded in the secondary because they don't have the personnel to really push that, to push that envelope. Look, the Legion of Boom has been done and over with. You can't live in the past when it comes to defense. You got to bring in new faces, new bodies, new mindsets, new types of athleticism. And not only does it count defensively, but offensively as well. I think that Russell Wilson, because of Aaron Donald breathing down his neck, and of course, when you think of Wilson, he says Aaron Donald's probably one of the best defensive players I've ever had a chance to play against. Well, that's true. Aaron Donald did have a field day. But the LA Rams just put up 10 in the first, 7 in the second, third, a 6 and a third. Seattle just did not look like Seattle. And before the game ever started, I looked at the schedule for Seattle. I said, you know what? They can meet again against the Steelers in Super Bowl 40.
Oof.
No,
unfortunately, that is not the case. I don't see that happening. Of course, again, you have your Seattle apologists. You have your Rams apologists. Again, I think they're a tier above Seattle. And I don't say that because of the record and they're both 6 and 3. I mean, to the extent of offensive weaponry, Jared Goff getting it off, Robert Woods having a good game. I just don't know that they're a complete team as to where they need to be with the personnel that they have. They have the tools and weaponry. Something's amiss. This is not a Super Bowl run for them. It's going to be close. They're going to get deep in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, I just don't think that they're going to be able to get it done, at least offensively, maybe not defensively. Yes, they have Aaron Donald. Okay, wonderful. I love Aaron Donald, great player, great guy, but that's kind of it. I mean, you can't just have one-star player, right? It doesn't take one person to play defense. You can't be a linebacker and all of a sudden back up and play a corner deep in man coverage and expect to do it. It's not going to happen. So
I mean, they've got some defense. They've got some defense with the Rams. I mean, they shut down the Seahawks. They're all now in a 3-way division tie that they're going to fight it out with. And I think at the end it's going to be the Cardinals standing. They seem to be the most complete team out of that. I mean, the 49ers they can't overcome those injuries, so they're out of the question. I've never seen a team more decimated by injuries than the 49ers this year. So, I mean, I think it comes down to that 3-way tie, and I don't think Seattle is going to be in the mix at the end.
No, what do you think about that? Is there some type of dichotomy? Can the 49ers get into the playoffs? They're 4-6.
No, the 49ers are not getting into the playoffs. I have as much faith as anybody has in Nick Mullins. But I will say this about Seattle. I think something that a big opportunity missed, and maybe not everybody's going to like that I say this, but the Seattle Seahawks are a much better team if they actually went out and signed Antonio Brown like people believed they were going to at one point. That's what they're missing. They have Tyler Lockett. They have DK Metcalf. I get that. But Metcalf is young. Tyler Lockett is more of a big, flashy guy here and there. Antonio Brown is that wide receiver that you can throw to 15 times a game that Russell Wilson does not have right now.
Well, I guess they didn't want to deal with Antonio Brown when he got arrested for murder.
Yeah.
Well, Antonio Brown's had four homes within 6 months span. Okay, I'm just saying.
And he keeps destroying them and throwing things at people.
Well, who knows? All I know is that if I'm doing a press conference, I ask him a question and I'm going to duck. So in the NFC West, you have 3 teams at 6 and 3: Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks. I don't think the 49ers squeak in at all whatsoever. I think the 49ers are more on the outside looking in, and not because of the mullet from Nick Mullins. I don't think that has anything to do with it, except for maybe a good hair contest you talk about on TV. But outside of that, I just don't see anybody doing anything respective, again, except for the Cardinals. That Hail Murray was absolutely fantastic. I talk about this because Kyler Murray just let it rip. I mean, he threw that sucker as he was heading out of bounds into try coverage, not dual, not single, try coverage, and still managed to grab the ball out of the air. And until somebody does something more special than what we've seen from the best wide receiver in the NFL, you're not going to see it again in a Hail Murray. So it's been renamed and dubbed Hail Murray, at least from what I've seen it from my vantage point, and that's all I keep hearing. How do you believe Kyler was able to get out, Kyle Murray, out of that area in order to even make that throw? I mean, he had no coverage.
Buffalo was just slow. I mean, I think that they let Kyler Murray run for like 30 yards back and forth out of the pocket before he actually threw that ball. So, I mean, they had plenty of opportunity to take him down. I don't know what they were doing on defense, but I mean, and I want to make fun of those 3 Buffalo defenders who really just
Yeah,
got
notice that you did that on
shamed.
Twitter.
Yeah, they got shamed, but I felt they don't even need to be named. They were all doing their job.
They know who they are.
They were just beat by the best wide receiver in the game. Certainly, a top 2 or 3 guy. And that was just, I mean, it was amazing. And him coming down with that. And I don't fault the Buffalo defenders. They tried. They were all in position.
they okay. I won't blame them, but I think this is as great of a play as we might ever see in our lives. I mean, this was a classic Aaron Rodgers rollout against the Cowboys. I saw somewhere that the play was actually called Cowboy, and Kyler Murray should have looked inside and got another play down easy, threw it into triple coverage. I don't know how he threw off his off foot running out of bounds as perfectly as he did, but that ball was exactly where it needed to be. And DeAndre Hopkins, going into the game, I wouldn't have said that he was the best wide receiver in football. Coming out of it, I will agree that DeAndre Hopkins is the best wide receiver in football.
He definitely has top billing right now. There is no doubt about it. He has top billing. But when you're talking about, we're going to switch gears here. I want to talk a little bit of Steelers before we wrap up and get out of here, because as we know, the Steelers are perfect at 9-0. Of course, that matches TJ Watt's jersey number 90, and he's been an absolute master when it comes to pass rush. He's had the most sacks on that Steelers line. A lot of reasons why the Steelers are 9-0. One of the reasons, at least I believe, that the Steelers are 9-0 and will end up losing a game or two. They will. I'm telling you right now, Steeler Nation, that is exactly what's going to happen. Not because people want to talk about this as a trap game, or this is, it's just bound to happen. It's just one of those things. We almost seen that trap game against Dallas, if you had actually watched that game. Because
I watched that game.
Because Gilbert, I know you were. And I know Noah's watching that too. But I look at this game, I think to myself, man, how much of a scare could you put into Steeler fans when you have an XFL quarterback coming in, taking his first NFL snaps? He's been on practice squads, wonderful. Practice squads don't mean a thing unless you get on the field and do your thing. And I think Gilbert did it. I think he really put a fear in the Steeler fans. And I think more importantly, when you look at Jerry's world and his inability to recognize that he has something there, he's going to be on the training block and ultimately find himself in a situation where he's on somebody else's practice squad, because in Jerry's infinite wisdom, he's going to keep guys like Andy Dalton. And of course, being an AFC North guy, I recognize that Andy Dalton is who he is. There is no better version of Andy Dalton than what we continue to see year after year. But for the first time in the franchise, 87 years, I said 87. Steelers inception in 33. So 87 years worth of history. The Steelers have not only blown away their own record of being undefeated, but now they're into Miami Dolphin territory. That's right, Finheads. You know what I'm talking about. This Steelers team is all in your mahi-mahi. When I look at the Steelers team, because of so many devastational players on both sides of the ball, yes, this is Steeler football. Between Chase Claypool, obviously part of rookie conversation for the most touchdowns, certainly should be in that conversation. Eric Ebron coming over from Indianapolis as a free agent. Smith-Schuster getting his share. Deontay Johnson, just an absolute beast. Marquise Pouncey getting it done, keeping Ben upright. For the most part, there's been a few times where I kind of questioned the moves on that offensive line and the pancake blocks that they kind of missed, and that's where Ben had went down to some extent with somewhat of a knee injury. No one wants to call it an injury, but a knee sprain, knee gets hurt, whatever you want to call it. But the Steelers' defense has just been an absolute monster this year. If you want to talk about a steel curtain, the only thing that's preventing them from me calling them that, steel curtain 2.0, is the fact that they allow those intermediate passes to really chew them up and to chew up field. That is the problem that I have with the Steelers team. Outside of that, if they can get that corrected, Ben's thrown for the fewest interceptions in probably the last 7 years that I know of. And in turn, just making this run almost phenomenal. Only the 2015 Panthers, 2009 Saints are the only two other teams with a 9-0 start. But of course, again, like I said, the Dolphins are the only ones that are looking forward to the Steelers dropping one or two so they can still remain undefeated. Amber, what are your thoughts about this Steelers defense? Are they legit? What would you suspect they would have to do in order to continue this win streak and prevent those middle field passes?
I mean, I think the defense has been playing great, especially TJ Watt. I mean, he always looks really great. I mean, TJ Watt had 2 sacks. Bud Dupree and Joe Hayden looked pretty good. I'd say the one thing, those 10-yard those 10-yard passes down the field that eat us up. I mean, that's a problem that goes back years. I don't know how to fix that, but there is a problem that they could fix, which is the running game looks bad and is getting worse. I mean, James Conner is averaging 2.8 yards per carry the last 3 games. Steelers rushed for less than 50 yards for the 3rd straight game. And I saw the post-game presser with Tomlin. He called them balanced 2 or 3, 4 different times, but they can't or they aren't running the ball. So I don't know what he's talking about in terms of them being balanced. And James Conner is just, I mean, I think he's made it. I feel bad because I went to the University of Pittsburgh and I love him, but I think he's kind of proving himself that he's not an every down back.
Well, there are games that he has. I mean, he has shown his ability to be elusive. He has shown his ability to shed those tackles, but he's not an every down back. And I hate to say that because I love the guy. He's fought cancer. We know someone in our family somewhere has lost her life or lost a family member to cancer. So it's not as if we don't recognize the struggles that James Conner has gone through. Is he a complimentary back? Absolutely. There's no question.
Yeah.
But you need to get somebody within that starting role and to start with those running back by committee situations. I mean, there are enough of them. I mean, there is Jalen Samuels. You have McFarland. You have Snell. You have a complimentary.
I mean, that's what most teams are doing now, running back by committee. I mean, they need to get someone. They need a downhill runner, someone like Najee Harris from Alabama to really anchor that. And I think, James Conner would be a great compliment. He could catch passes too. I mean, there's a lot that they can be doing there. And that's always been part of the Steelers' identity. I'm surprised they're getting so far away from it. I mean, they're not even giving Conner the ball. So
the low production is definitely a concern. But I think that it goes way deeper than James Conner. And I think that, a lot of people are putting it on James Conner. I get that he's the guy that's got to perform at the end of the day. And Tomlin said today, actually, or Tuesday, he said it, that the running game, he acknowledges that the running game isn't meeting the standard or isn't up to par or whatever he said, and the Tomlinism of the day, basically. And, if you look, it was brought to my attention actually on Monday that if you watch the offensive line, David DeCastro is all name right now. He's not playing well. He's missing a lot of blocks, and he's really not pushing anybody into holes. So you slow down James Conner's runs, and a lot of his holes are actually on the backside with Matt Filer. And, that's on James that he's got to see those and adjust quicker. But the designed runs that the Steelers are running, and whether you want to put this on Fickner or I don't think it's Ben drawing up plays in the dirt. I think those are all a success. But somebody needs to realize that side of the line is just not doing it in run game, and they continue to go to the right side of the line. I'm not saying that James Conner is the answer or, whatever it is. I'm just saying that for right now, I'm going to wait it out after 3 100-yard gains, and I get that I'm an optimist in this situation.
Well, I think it's going to go beyond optimism, especially as the rest of their schedule unfolds. There are going to be some challenges. They are going to drop 1 or 2 games. That's foreseeable. But those games form humility. The minute you lose those games, you recognize that we need to be We need to have our mindset in a different position. We need to do something differently. We need to be more creative offensively, at least from the running the ball standpoint. The line is there. The protection is there. Question is, can they get the A-gaps open? Can they allow a runner? And of course, right now it doesn't seem to be an issue. It doesn't seem to be a problem because they continue winning. But you have to have balance. I don't know what balance Mike Tomlin was talking about. Maybe he's seen somebody on a flying trapeze overhead while they were playing. I don't know. But all I know is that against Cincinnati didn't look good either. Of course, that offensive line did them no favors. Joe Burrow was just manhandled. And now he gets a real taste of what AFC North football is all about when they travel to Pittsburgh and get handled at the line by the Steelers D. But going back to the offense, you have to have balance, and the balance needs to come sooner rather than later. I remember Steelers used to run that dual back set, right? We've seen Deuce Staley, Jerome Bettis. Deuce would be the blocker. We've seen this when Le'Veon Bell was there, right? So you had Roosevelt Nix, who was blocking up front for him. So we've seen those. We haven't really seen that so far. That's the only thing that would have me worried outside of those intermediate passes I was talking about from the onset of talking about the Steelers. This is the only year that I could think of in recent memory that the Steelers have a decent schedule, that it's not a bad schedule. It's not insurmountable. But having to go to Baltimore and win, having to go to Tennessee and win, two very hostile environments. I don't care if there are fans there or not. It doesn't matter because the players are the ones who showed up and made it happen. And
I think we're actually favored in all but one of our final games, too. It's a 50-50 toss-up against the Ravens on Thanksgiving, but we're pretty strong favorites down the stretch. I'm certain they're going to drop one or two games. It's going to happen, but they're finishing the season with not the toughest competition.
No, definitely not. I think if there's any, Tomlin said it that he doesn't believe in trap games. This isn't the Big Ten facing the MAC. The Jaguars are here to beat our butts, whatever he said. And but if there is a trap game, it's Buffalo, and I think that's the biggest what if left on the schedule. The Ravens can't find an identity anywhere on offense, and I have no faith in Phillip Rivers. So that just leaves Buffalo in Buffalo.
Well, I think Buffalo may have something to say about it, but at the same token, their actions last year against the Steelers playing at Heinz Field, we watched Steelers go down in very dramatic fashion. Okay, granted, Ben was not in it. Okay, let's take Ben out of the equation. They handled between Devlin and they did it with Mason. The problem is that those two guys, neither one of them, even if you put a mind meld and pulled a Spock on them, neither one of those guys are Ben Roethlisberger. Let's just score that up right now. Put those guys together. They still don't equate the vision. They don't equate the physicality. They don't equate the amount of championships, the championship mentality, knowing how to close games out. They do not possess that. There's only one Ben, only one Big Ben, unless you're counting the one in London. Speaking of London and bridges falling down, we're about done with this episode of the Steelers Brawl. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. For me, thank you all for tuning in. Please share, like it, love it. Anything for you, Amber?
Me?
Yes.
Are we just saying goodbyes then?
Yes, we're closing out the show.
Closing out the show,
yes,
then.
Ma'am.
No, I think it went great. So come back and listen.
Noah, what you got?
Definitely come back, and that's it. Here we go.
Thank you for tuning in. This has been the first edition of Steelers Brawl. This will be found at Brawl Network. Go follow Brawl Network. Follow me at Rude Dog Reyes. Amber, where can people find you?
At Blamber, BLAMBERR on Twitter.
And at Noah Strack on Twitter.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys again. This has been episode 1 of Steelers Brawl on the Brawl Network.